Hey there, grab a cup of coffee and join us in an entertaining and thoughtful conversation about parenting. We're tasting new coffee every episode and diving into a deep conversation about the inevitable speed bumps and seasons we'll encounter as we strive to be the most successful parents and spouses we can be. Welcome to Family Brew Podcast. So what are we drinking?
We are drinking Buena Vista. This is called Something You Can Count On. It's a dark roast blend. It says it has notes of chocolate, red apple, and maple. But we're saying it smells more like red meat,
Something
red
you,
apple.
Something you can count on smelling like pot roast.
All four of us agree that this is probably the least aromatic one we've tested so far.
It had the grounds smelled a bit herby and meaty. To me. Yes, definitely.
It definitely tastes like
This is from
it tastes like a glazed pot roast.
Buena Vista.
I don't know why I'm laughing.
Founded in Santa Cruz, California.
I mean, it's not a bad flavor. Like I like meat,
Not
but
what you're
I wouldn't
expecting
expect
when
for
you-
my coffee to taste like that.
This is like the bacon coffee we tried a long time ago. This is definitely more meaty
Yes,
than the bacon
I agree.
coffee.
really?
This literally...
They could sell this as bacon flavored coffee, and I would believe them.
This is like a sweet glazed meat. That's what it tastes like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any,
What do you taste? You taste it?
Yeah.
Definitely in the after notes, there's definitely a meat.
Do
that
you
my
get
brain
any
goes, "That's
chocolate
meaty."
If
or
you're a
apple?
vegetarian, I would
No.
not try this coffee.
or
Probably
maple?
gonna-
Maybe
probably
the
Taste
maple.
maple.
This-
Hardcore.
I taste the maple.
This would
Maple,
probably like
but
But
barbecue,
same-
Yes.
yes,
meat, or something.
roasty.
Yeah.
if a vegetarian tried this, they would probably not be a vegetarian.
That's what I'm
anymore.
saying. Yeah, exactly.
This
exactly.
would make them crave meat.
Yeah, no,
All right,
that's not.
scale of 1 to 5.
1.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm
I
gonna
probably
give it a
am
1.
gonna say 1 also.
Just because, not that I
'Cause I've
hate the
given some
flavor
better
of
ones
meat,
a 2.
but it's just not what I look for
Right.
when I'm drinking
I
coffee.
got it a 4.
4?
Yeah, well, because it's not bad.
It's a man.
Okay,
4 out
so
of
this is
5?
a man's
Yeah, it's not
coffee.
bad.
yes.
And you gave that last one a 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other one was too sweet. This one tastes like if they sold it as like it doesn't taste bad. Like it's not a bitter, acrid flavor.
Just to
It's-
clarify, the last one was the almond amaretto.
Right. It doesn't
And
make
the
you
fact
like
that
want
you're
to
putting
spit
those on
it
the
out.
same level. No, I don't want to
Right.
drink anymore.
But it. Oh, really?
Here, give me a cup.
Enjoy.
7 out of 20. Sorry, Buena
If you
Vista.
relabel it Buena Vista as, meaty something or another, you might,
I feel like
better
this is
reviews.
the kind of coffee that you drink in the morning after a fresh hog hunt.
I think my chest hair just grew with that drink.
Oh, goodness. Today's topic is mental health.
Mental health as it relates to parenting, or just,
In general.
yeah.
I think this one might be a little bit more about us as parents or as people in general. And obviously, maybe how we will use what we've learned to be better parents. But definitely more relates to us. Right?
Yeah, I think it's been helpful in all aspects, and seeing it in learning about mental health and taking care of yourself and everything like that has bled over into being better parents,
True.
I would say. So
Yeah.
So we'll probably have Jim take us on a little journey of his experiences with mental health. Want to just remind us again what your line of work is?
So I am a firefighter paramedic. I work for a local agency. It's very large. And so I've been doing that I've been in the field now for a total of 15 years between private ambulance work and then finally on the fire suppression side for the last 5 years. And, it carries a lot of baggage with it, that line of work, especially when you get into it, because I would say that it attracts a certain type of person.
Did you know that going in?
No, absolutely not. I was young. So I'm 36 now, and I started when I was 20. And as a 20-year-old kid who was sheltered his entire life, I had a certain preconceived notion of what it would be like to go to these crazy calls and be this person who could keep his calm head on their shoulders and handle everything and so on and so forth. And over time, my story's a little different, I guess. I don't know, and probably people in my line of work can relate more than I know. But for me, over those 15 years, like, I was more concerned over the fact that I never felt anything over some of the very traumatic things that I was a part of. And, you know, I kind of came to the conclusion, I used to joke all the time, like, I think I'm just broken inside. Like, it just doesn't bother me. No nightmares, no none of that stuff. And
now, when did you expect to feel something in the moment, in the middle of the call? Did you expect to, like, have some introspection later that where it kind of...
Yeah, you know, you would expect to, I don't know, you see things that I would say most human people aren't ever supposed to see. And you not only see it, but then you have to intervene somehow. And
Right.
And that carries, like I said, a certain amount of weight with it. So I don't know, I guess I went in expecting to, like, be this grizzled guy who'd seen all this stuff and whatever, and this kind of idea of who I was going to turn into because of my exposure to those things. And kind of to find out that's just not how it happens. It's just not how it happens. You know, you're just you, and you are still just going based on your training, your desire to help, all these different things. But for me personally, I just never felt anything. And I've seen, I mean, like most people will tell you, and I hate to be too graphic here, but everything, it's dead children and you know, blood and guts and whatever else, very sad things to be a part of. And then you just go back to your station, you go to sleep or whatever it is, and then you don't feel anything about it, and you talk about it openly like it's not a big deal. And you know, after so long, it does catch up with you. That's not to say that's going to happen to everybody, but it did for me. So I work for an agency that is severely understaffed, and in the midst of COVID, everybody was, you know, nobody knew how to handle that. So when COVID came out, people would get sick on COVID, and they would be out for 2 weeks, and then they needed to keep the engines running. So in order to do that, they would force hire you into mandatory overtime. And I had been going through quite a bit in my personal life for a while, and it probably all started in 2020, right? The height of the lockdowns, all that stuff. I could feel this extra sense of anxiety over everything because you just don't know what's happening, right? What's happening in society, what's going to happen. I'm out here dealing with all these sick and dying people and this disease that is so supposedly super easily transmittable, and I'm going to bring that home to my family, you know. And I have a pregnant wife at the time, and so very high anxiety. And then 2020, my brother passed away from COVID, my older brother, and that hurt. It was the first time I'd ever had to grieve anybody in my own life.
Did you even have time to do that with all the overtime and all that?
Not really. I used my bereavement time, and I took 48 hours off and then right back to work, because there's this cultural, it's like a cultural level.
Unwritten code.
Yeah, in the fire service, where if you call off sick for any reason, somebody else is going to have to get force hired to fill in your position. They don't shut down engines, which is another subject. But my brother died 2 weeks before Christmas, and if I had called off for multiple shifts to try and help my family out, somebody was going to get forced over Christmas Eve, Christmas, and I didn't want that. So I took my 2 days off, and we went to work. For me personally, I have never had to mourn anybody, not like that. And so I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know, I couldn't even cry. I still haven't really to this day. Which only led to more to my belief, like, geez, how broken am I, here's my family, and they're wailing their eyes out, just their lungs just scream at the top of their lungs, and it's a horrible thing. And then to add to all that, because he died of COVID, my family, who is already super paranoid as it is, I hadn't seen them in a year because they locked themselves into their house. Now they're extra paranoid, so I couldn't even give them a hug. They didn't want to hug each other because they were afraid of contracting this virus. So all of that went down. more drama after that, trying to handle his estate and everything else. And it's just stress, stress. And then I'm getting force hired at work and working 182 hours straight. And I get 24 hours off, and I'm working 120 hours straight, and I got 2 days off. And it's just so much. And over time, it finally just added up. And I noticed this change in my own ability to handle it. I came back to work after our last child was born. And I got force hired into 7 days immediately. And normally I could handle that. It's like, well, it's just my turn. I lost my mind. I mean, I was screaming on the phone. I remember I called Anna, and she's trying to calm me down, telling me she's going to be okay and this and that. And I'm telling, I'm yelling at her, it's not okay. Can't do this, da-da-da-da. I did my time, and I went home, and I had a few days off, and then they forced me on to 8 days, so 182 hours. I was going to have 48 hours off, and I had been forced onto another 8 days. And I was sitting at the station, my force hire station, and I was just laying in bed in the middle of the day, and I remember it, driving to work for that shift initially, and just, I'd had the weirdest experience I'd ever had, which I guess you would consider a flashback at this point. But I'm driving to work, and I took a turn a little too fast, and the body of my truck kind of shook, like rolled a little bit. And I was immediately back to the scene of this call that I had been on, where these people had driven the same exact model truck that I had. They had rolled their truck at 120 miles an hour and destroyed themselves. I mean, just super grisly scene. But the truck was rolled up into a little ball. There's a dead child in the back, all these different things. And I just remember taking that turn and wondering, I don't know, wondering if that's what they felt right before they flipped that truck, And the next thing I knew, I was at a stop sign, ready to turn back to my station. I lost track of this entire drive. So at this point, I'm like, holy crap, something is very wrong in my mind, what is going on, and I'm kind of panicking. I get to the station and trying to act normal, trying to do all this stuff, and I think it was probably fairly obvious that I'm not okay. And thankfully, I went and pulled my close friend of mine, his name is John, aside. And he's been doing it a lot longer than I have. And I told him what I was feeling. And he looked at me dead in the eyes. He said, man, you're on the verge of depression, just like the rest of us. We're all getting slammed. He's like, you need to take some time. So now I'm panicking. Now I'm like, holy crap, dude. I'm already losing it. This job has destroyed me. It's going to destroy my body. It's going to destroy my mind, so on and so forth. Now I'm freaking out even more. So, of course, I get force hired. That night I have the first nightmare I've ever had about work in general, ever, in 15 years. And I'm freaking out even more. I called Anna on the way to the next station, and then I'm telling her, like, I'm not okay. Something's wrong, da-da-da-da. I go to work like the good little soldier that I am, and I'm laying there at the station, and they force hired me, and I couldn't get out of bed. I had tears in my eyes, and I just felt trapped, like very trapped, like a bug in a jar, as I always say. And I had just fallen to this level, this place that I had never experienced before. And I reached out, and I remember I sent a text message to you and to one of our friends, our mutual friends, and you guys had said some things to me, and it kind of just led me to talk to my captain. So I reached out to my captain I was working with that day, and thankfully he really went out on a limb for me. He helped me out big time. Called the BC over. I went home. The BC is a battalion chief, for people who don't know. And I told them what I was going through, and they sent me home on stress leave. After that, after about a week and a half trying to figure out what was going on, I had some people reach out and told me that I should check into this place called First Responder Wellness. It's an inpatient facility for first responders who are struggling with mental health, substance abuse, those kind of things. And,
PTSD.
Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'll go get some help, talk to somebody a couple times a week while I'm off work. Because at that point I was off work for an indefinite amount of time. And 4 days before I leave, I'm ready to start, they tell me, oh, no, this is a live-in facility. You're going to be here the whole time. Like, you're not leaving for 3 months. What? You know, thankfully we were able to make it work.
Now, is that place run by former first responders, or
Some facility, right? Or some of the members are, right?
Some of them are, yeah.
Okay.
Some of them are. The other ones, they have a doctor who's our lead psychologist who specializes in first responders and, you know, psychology and things that go into that, and especially hospital workers, nurses, those sort of things, and the stressors that go into those fields. So I went through 3 months. It was 90 days I was there, and it was very intense therapy. You know, a lot of, it was a journey. Let's just put it that way. It's been a journey. It's still going on. And then I left, and I was in great, you know, like back on level ground, went back to work, and I got forced into 12 days straight right off the bat. Like, just way to smack you in the mouth right as you get back. And it's been ongoing. And thankfully from there, you know, I've been in ongoing therapy and things like that. And I just give that backstory, and it's probably pretty long-winded, but there's a lot to it. Just to say, like, I have learned so much in what it means to take care of yourself, and your own personal view of yourself and how it shapes who you are in all aspects of your life. So I say it within my work life, but also even in my personal life, and being a better dad and being a better husband. I think Anna would agree. It's a night and day difference from who I was to where I am now. Because
Really quick, just want to interject real quick.
Yeah.
During your program there, they had an event called Family Week, where the family members are invited to join and partake in a little bit of psychoeducation and a little bit of therapy as well, just to kind of understand more about what your spouse or family member is going through and learning and such. And it was very much worth it. When I went, actually, Mark and Jamie watched our 3 kids, including our brand new baby. So thank you again for that, guys. But I remember the main therapist, he asked us, all the spouses, a question. He said, "What are you hoping to get out of this program for your significant other?" And I said, "I want my husband to find his joy again." And I will tell you that you did. You found it, and then it, you know, wavered a little bit here and there, but just through the work, you found it again. And I didn't realize really that you had lost it until we got to that point, because it had been such a slow decline in a sense, right? So, but yeah.
yeah. So it's been a long journey, and it's been almost 2 years now from that point. And I'm still going to a therapist and figuring things out, but I'm now at a point where my therapist is even saying, like, I think you're good. I think we can start lessening your sessions, and we'll start going to monthly check-ins and things like that, just because the work that I've put in has helped so much. You know, it's helped change my outlook, my entire outlook on life, and to see, just to be able to see beauty in life again, you know, because you get so weary of everything. Yeah, so.
All right. Well, I think the audience is going to be in 3 categories. There's going to be people that have walked the same path, maybe not first responder, but same mental health path, right? There's going to be the spouses or the friends or the mothers or the sisters, the people that have, and then there's going to be people that don't have any experience with the topic at all. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask some questions.
Sure.
And if you feel like it's personal, you don't want to answer, just say pass, and we'll just pass. I
open
know you
book.
feel like you're pretty open.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, I know your brother was kind of a catalyst, probably wasn't the only thing, right? It was maybe just added to the mix, right? But
Right.
Other than that specific event, do you feel like it kind of came on slowly? Or do you feel like there were some like definite like specific events that you feel like kind of led to, I don't know what the right term is, like
Sure.
he's talking about lying in bed and that one shift, like
Sure.
not able to go on. I don't know what the right term is for that, but if we call it, like, let's say a ground zero moment, right, where it just, that was the pinnacle of like where you just couldn't
Right.
function. Was leading up to that, do you feel like there were any warning signs?
I think looking back now, we
Yeah,
could
that's what I
definitely
was
see
gonna
them.
say.
You know,
Okay.
At the time, there was definitely not. We just didn't know any better.
Can I
Just-
make a comment
Yeah, go
that
ahead.
might You can edit this out
No,
if you don't.
and I do have questions for you after too. So go ahead.
I was just going to say, we talked about it before. Jim used to be known as the grumpy old man husband. Like, my friends didn't like him because he was grumpy, quote unquote, never wanted to spend time with people, things like that. And then after his health journey, like his mental health journey, and he started to heal and stuff, he was like, we almost switched. And he wanted to spend time with people because he learned that connection is so important and stuff. And so that type of a thing we just always attributed to a personality thing. And then we realized later, like the isolation is a big sign, but we just didn't even realize. So it was kind of, in my perspective, that part was slow going. If that makes sense. Was more subtle. Does that answer your question on my end?
Sure. Yeah, I was just curious, like looking back, could you see like, oh man, I should have seen that come in, or I should have noticed that,
Yeah, so I probably should have thrown this out, but my final diagnosis came in as PTS. So we call it PTS is, they're trying to get away from the disorder part of it, right?
Okay.
So just post-traumatic stress injury, so PTSI, depression, anxiety, which are also signs of PTS. Those things are all cumulative over time, right? And while some of that definitely stems from what I went through as a child, the majority of it is this chronic exposure to these traumatic incidents and not having the time to decompress. And when I did have the time, not doing it properly.
Right.
So,
and that's not something they teach, right? They
No.
teach you how to decompress.
And this is all fairly new for first responders anyway, since about 2015 is when they really started looking at it. But you start looking into just what mental health is as far as society goes. For me, to answer your question, I think COVID and the lockdowns, everything just heightened my anxiety overall. Like I'd never really felt, I've always had anxiety over like social situations, going into a new place with new people, and I'm going to be judged all the time and this and that. And to the point where it was pretty, invasive into our life. I would say, when I was on probation as a fireman, it got to a point where we were talking about separating for a while because it took over everything because I was so focused on getting a job and providing, being successful that I was worried about who I was presenting myself to be to everyone else. And it had stressed Anna out so much that we were looking at taking a break, which is hard to say even these days, but that's what it can do, that kind of stress level when not appropriately handled. So, I'd always had that kind of general anxiety. But when COVID happened and all the lockdowns, all I could think of was, man, I got to go to work. There were certain things that happened at work. We didn't have PPEs for the first, which that's protective equipment, when we have to go deal with these people who are sick with COVID, and COVID's killing everybody apparently. So, and guess who has to go in? Of the entire crew, they're sending the firefighter in, which is my rank, is me, and I'm the new guy. But I have a pregnant wife at home, so it's just a lot, right? It was a lot. So definitely everything was heightened from that point. And then when my brother passed away, there's always this metaphor, right? Like your mind is a cup or a jar, and you fill it up with all of these moments, these traumatic incidents, these everything. It fills up with like this liquid. And for me, if I was a quarter full based on just my general anxiety, when my brother died, it shot up to 3/4 full. It was just pain. And then everything else after that, with dealing with his estate, and then the constant force hires, and the feeling just a general lack of care from the department that tells you like, we care about you and all these things, and then sends you out in these situations without giving you training or protective equipment or any of these different things. I would say it just put me over the top. The amount of time at work in that environment where you're just boiling all the time, it just burns you.
Well, and earlier you said that this kind of line of work attracts a certain type of person, right?
Right.
But like the scenario you're describing where it's like the perfect storm of like 2 kids, a pregnant wife, losing your brother, all this forced overtime, like there's not that's not for anybody, right? There's no perfect person that's able to handle all that, right? Like that's a scenario where
I think anybody's going to feel. And in fact, looking at it now, there are a lot more people who are going that same route that I did. But yeah, it was very difficult. And you start to, So if I were to go back and just say that type of person, I'll just describe myself. As a young kid, I grew up very sheltered. I was very overweight, extremely overweight, in fact, very insecure about myself because of that, and grew up in an environment where it was like there was no praise, right? There was no nothing. So it's like I'm always trying to prove myself, but I'm already set back because of how big I am and all these other things. So I'm super insecure. I went through all of this hard work. I lost all this weight. I put myself out there to be a primary paramedic and do all these things. Very difficult things for most people because you have to be able to take charge and put yourself out in front of everybody and not worry about what they think and so on and so forth. I keep putting myself out there. I get hired, and now I'm in an even higher pressure environment, where and I'm successful at all of it. I'm pushing myself hard. I can do this. I've been doing it. And at the end of the day, I'm still seeing myself as a failure. And this big thing that I could always say is anytime I walked into a room, I felt like a child surrounded by men, by grown-ups, by adults, which just goes back to my own self-perception, right? Anyway, I feel like we're just going on about
That's okay.
But
do you feel like there's a gender component? So I don't want to minimize,
Sure.
I know females can struggle with mental health too. I don't want to minimize that at all. But do you feel like there's a gender component whereas men asking for help is not like the thing that we do too often, especially in like a type A type environment like you are? Do you feel like there's not, like you were, you don't want to ask for help?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you just feel like, and again, the culture and the industry this is what you signed up for.
Right.
This is what you signed up for. You should have known, if you can't handle it, go do something else, go work in an office, which is frustrating, right? Because we're in an industry that, again, most human people are never going to be exposed to the same amount. And not to try and compare ourselves to the military, but even I've talked to guys who have been in the military and seen combat and all these different things, and they're saying, dude, that's 4 years. You're talking about 30 years of doing this every day. Mm-hmm. And so there's just a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of chemical components in your brain, things like that tend to affect you in certain ways. And now, thankfully, it's, word's getting out there. So after all of this, after all of the therapy and everything that I've learned, we have both been able to utilize that, right? Anna has been putting a lot of these things into effect too. There's certain things that you can do to help decompress. The journaling and exercise is super important. But the 3 pillars of that health are, of a holistic view of it, are going to be mental health, physical health, and then spiritual health, right? And it was interesting to me to know that in all of this therapy, in this group of 40 people who are of all points of view on life, the spirituality is such an important component of healing and of growth in all of it that they encourage people to engage in some sort of spirituality, whatever that is. And again, I understand that they can't be like, they can't point it to one certain belief because it's just going to rub people the wrong way, certain people, and they're going to leave. Mm-hmm. But even like AA, if you were to look at that, they tell you to believe in God as you understand him, so on and so forth. So I always fall back to that. Like, you have to have something to believe in, right? And for me, it's very easy to translate that into my faith in Christ and then share that to people around me, because at the end of the day, like, you want a solid foundation to fall back on. That's going to be it for me, and I believe for everybody. So
now, you talked about the chemical component, and you don't have to share your own walk with this, but do you have any thoughts on like medication or how that plays in?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a place for it. Me personally, I have no judgments for anybody who needs medication.
Right.
I'll just be open. I'm taking anti-anxiety medication right now, and honestly, it has been a major help for me. A major help, because what I noticed that it stops me from doing is entering this thought cycle. That's just continuous, right? It's like I used to ruminate on certain events of the day, and just maybe I was embarrassed by something, whatever, and I would just cycle on it over and over and over, and it would just bring me down. And somehow, and I imagine it's in conjunction with all the rest of the work that I've been putting in, I'm able to just keep myself from entering that anymore. It's like I can breathe. And for anybody who is maybe thinking like there's some sort of stigma to it, like, oh, I don't need meds, I'm not crazy, da da da. I'm telling you, I used to think all those same things. And since I started on these things, I'm at a point now where I think I could kind of start backing off of it. Mm-hmm. But just to get me to this point was beyond helpful, you know?
So what sorts of like guardrails would you say that are important to put up now that you're kind of in recovery part of it, right? Like, is there any sort of guardrails that you'd want to?
I think it's important that they're called boundaries, right? Mm-hmm. We have to set boundaries between ourselves and for ourselves and for those around us, like what they can do to us, right? So again, where I used to have these ideas of, I made this guy mad, you know, he didn't like that I missed this or I didn't do it or whatever. Now it's my thing. I'm not responsible for your feelings. You know, I'm responsible for my feelings. You're an adult. Mm-hmm. You can take and manage your own feelings. If I apologize and I own up for a mistake that I make, that's fine. But if I don't think it's a mistake, I'm not going to dwell on how you feel about it. It's not my fault.
Mm-hmm. I noticed there's a balance between your internal boundaries and your external boundaries, right? Yeah. Like something like limits you have to set for yourself.
Right.
And then ones you have to set with other people that can be triggering, right?
Mm-hmm. That's another thing is, I mean, I'm having a hard time because I feel like we should try and relate this to parenting, but to say that's all encompassing, right? To me, that's an understatement, because for me, even as a dad, I can feel it. I feel like I want to engage more with my children when I come home. Like I'm more willing to just drop whatever I'm doing and actually engage with them. Or if I'm like, I came home from work late today, in fact, and I could feel it. Like, oh, man, I just want to breathe for a day, you know, and before I do anything else. And we now know, like, that's totally normal, and it's necessary, even because
scientifically,
right? Like, there's that chemical addition in the brain that affects us when we are at work. So, yeah, to say that, like, even being engaging, like, I used to think it was this normal thing to just not want to help around the house and do chores and all that stuff. I really didn't want to do anything. Everything felt like it was just more on this plate of stuff that I just couldn't. I was already barely able to handle. So when Anna would ask me to do dishes, I'd lose my mind because I'm like, this is freaking ridiculous, man. I'm at work all the time, and you coming home expect me to work even more. Da, da, da.
So did you guys have to get like plastic plates so if you threw them, they would?
No, but we did have to learn how to, like, in that family week, I did have to learn the importance of decompression day. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's going to look different for everybody. And he's, you know, some days he comes home and he only needs a couple hours, or he just needs maybe 20 minutes. And sometimes he needs to leave the house, you know, sometimes to go just be by himself or whatever. And sometimes decompression looks like the whole family getting out of the house. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of different. And so there's no set exact thing. And I'm not always good at it at like, well, today's an example. Like sometimes things get in the way and we have to compromise. But another thing though, excuse me, is we learned the significant other at home needs their version as well. So learning to understand each other more was...
Their version of what? Decompression?
Decompression, because we're working the whole time he's on shift, that same amount of time, nonstop, 24/7, we have to be there for the kids. So balancing that. Obviously, he needs his first. He's got a more traumatic job than I do. Once in a while, mine's more traumatic. Yeah. But no, for in all seriousness, though, yeah, it's just understanding each other in that regard more instead of constantly separating our jobs, right. Learning to be a team.
Right. And there are days I come home and I feel totally fine. Like, yeah, I'll take on the kids today. You go and get out of here. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There are days where
does that depend on what kind of calls you ran or just the amount of time you're at work?
Sleep. It depends on the environment that I've been in. And a lot of times the people we work with can be a very toxic environment. So if I've just been surrounded by that negativity for a few days to come home, like, I can't just jump in. Like, I just feel drained. Like, the last few days were really good, right? And I had a great night's sleep last night. And I came home today and I fell asleep on the couch. Like, I don't know what to tell you why I'm so tired. I don't know, but I imagine it's just part of my body just starting to relax, you know, and like coming down off of those chemicals and sort of thing.
What would they call it? It's like heightened alertness when you're at work, even on an easy shift, quote unquote, right?
So even when you're sleeping, though, you could be awakened at any point, right?
Yeah.
So it's not really a deep.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah,
So I think, well, I mean, you were talking about parenting.
oh yeah,
Taking care of yourself in that regard helps you get back into the
right.
role of husband and father
And
better.
we're definitely going to get into that, how it affected the kids and all that. But just to hone in on the spouse part of it right now, and I hope I'm not asking questions that you guys haven't talked about before. But
Oh, I'm sure we've talked about it all.
okay, good. So if there are people listening and you're like, okay, I've been around somebody that's been to a breaking point or something, then this would be the part that they could like key in and listen. But like, what kind of warning signs were you able to see? Or did you have to do it looking back and go, okay,
Yeah, I think we're both in the same
there was
boat.
nothing
It was
in real time
looking-
that you were like, oh, he's not going to.
No, like it was so slow going
Okay.
that nothing was that much of a trigger. We are more aware now if like something's causing a problem, like a nightmare or
Is that because you're more vocal about it now?
no, we're
Or
just both in general
just
more aware,
more
right? And
tuned
communicate.
in?
Yeah, no, I guess we're more vocal about it too. Like, yeah, I would say so. You communicate with me when you're like, I need a minute, I need this, or he talks out his dreams or something with me and stuff. And
But she's on the flip side of that, she's understanding of that, right? Like I can say, hey, I'm not feeling good, or I just need to get out. I'm feeling overwhelmed, whatever it is, and she's like, all right, go.
Yeah,
you
it's
know what
that
I mean?
simple-
I have friends on the other side of that who they're not in that place. They don't like this being not widely known. Very openly is that people just blow you off like, oh, I've been with the kids for 3 days and or 4 days and you're going to sit here and tell me you need time. That's the attitude that they get. Well, I can tell you that if you don't get that time, you're going to blow up.
well,
It's just what
before we
happens.
had that psychoeducation, that's exactly how we treated each other. Like, well, you're being a jerk, you're being selfish with your time, or you're being, you think your job's hard. Like we had those conversations so many times before. And then after we went through all this and we've learned and both worked on our mental health, now there's more understanding. Sometimes we have bad days, but there's definitely more understanding in
Right.
general.
Yeah.
So what did it feel like as a spouse having to walk through that?
Which part?
Well, let's just go in order. Like, what was the first part? The first part was being,
Before
being
all-
unaware that it was getting close to a breaking point, right?
A lot of tension. There was a lot of tension, we were both just reacting, I think, all the time, if that makes sense, right?
And then when it got to a kind of a turning point, was that something you guys were?
When he
being-
had to leave work, I think something flipped in my brain where I was like, oh, crud, this goes deeper than my husband's a punk because he works in the fire service. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I realized, oh, there's more going on. And then it was survival mode for a little while because he was gone, but I knew he was getting the help he needed. We were in kind of an odd place. I didn't know what to expect. I was kind of confused about what exactly was happening. And we were even warned by all the therapists, like, don't walk on eggshells. Like, they're processing, but you can't treat them like this little fragile infant. You need to still move forward in life as adults.
So you're in this live-in facility, but you were able to make phone calls, and how did that?
Right.
Not at first, right?
So for the first week, it's just the rule for there was the first week was no
Phone.
technology. So all my communication devices, I got to make a phone call every night, which, you hear it and it sounds like, dude, what, this is prison? They put you on a hold or something? No, this is all voluntary. And then after that, the first 30 days, she was able to come on the weekends and visit. And then after that, I would come home on the weekends.
I think a big difference for you was most of the people there had substance issues too, and you didn't have to go through that part of the process.
Right.
So it was a little
Less strict.
a little bit. So when he came home on the weekends, that was fine, and it was purely like, you do what you need to do. And then I had friends that helped me like get through, my in-laws, my family, like we, the kids were taken care of, and we even went on a trip to the beach every now and then, and things like that. So it wasn't like he was complete, but we also lived near the facility. A lot of the guys that go there aren't even from this state.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that was a blessing for us that we were only a couple hours away.
So now you say for a while it was survival mode, right? Because like Jim's out of the house and you got 3 young kids. But was there ever a component where you're like, what about my own like mental state? Did you put any focus into that, or was it just like, I don't have time for that right now, I just got to keep the house running? Like,
So Jim and I have talked about this a few times. Part of my personality is like when I know there's a specific timeline for like a trial, I am good. I can do that for this amount of time. So it was a 3-month program. I was like, I got this for 3 months.
Okay.
And then
what?
After that, it's like, okay, my turn. But he had to acclimate to being back home, had to go back to work. So that was a little rocky for us. It was like good on one hand because he was in the best place he had ever been. But then it was like all that survival mode had just gone away. And I was like, okay, my turn. And so, yeah. Does that answer that question?
Well, sort of.
Partially.
So what led to you, because you've learned some techniques and things like that. So what led to that?
Okay, so his program provided a spousal support group. So we talked a lot about it. We got a very base level education on what he got, 6 days a week for 8 hours a day. We got in 1.5 hours once a week. And so I learned about meditation and yoga and counseling and journaling and all those things. We got to just talk with each other to get us through the actual program because we were all basically single parents now for a temporary time, right? And then after you came back home, he tried to teach us things, even tried to teach our daughter things. And then it was kind of like just going through for a little while. Then I got invited to this program called SAGE, and it's a first responder spousal retreat for 4 days. And that is, they have described it as it's his 90-day program crammed into 4 days, and they were not kidding. We were up at 7.
You guys both went?
No, just for
you.
wives.
Okay.
Or spouses, to be politically correct.
Gotcha.
But it was 7 a.m. to my roommate and I stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning, processing everything we were learning. They dug into your childhood. They dug into your own, any abuses you may have gone through. It was very intense, but I learned so much that I just found my individuality again, I guess, in a very positive way, but how to be a teammate with him still. So it wasn't like you're your own person, you do your thing and your husband's on his own. It was, this is how you take care of you so that you can be a better team. And so once we both finally had our chance to learn and grow, I felt like that helped us come back together and start moving at the same pace. So.
Gotcha.
Right.
So what did that look like for your kids during this process and then post process?
So,
I mean, have you been able to share a little bit about what was going on, or?
Yeah, again, we've talked about how we're pretty open with our kids about most things. And I was struggling initially with how to describe this to them and tell them I had to go away,
Honestly, for them, though, it just wasn't any different than you going to work.
I know, because I'm at work all the freaking time. Anyway, and I had to tell them that I remember I told my daughter, I said, I said, my heart is sick and I'm going away to go get it fixed. And she understood that, they didn't like it at first. And I think there's just a level where they're used to me being gone, which is another heartbreaker, but it is what it is. And, but they actually were really supportive of the whole thing, for being so young and everything, to understand that. I was really, really happy, really grateful, and it's funny because we kept it. I told them don't tell anybody about this right now. At the time I was still very stigmatized. The whole thing was, oh, dad's crazy and this and that. That's nonsense. But at the time, that's where I was, and so I told them don't tell anybody that I'm going away to this place. Let's just keep it a family secret for now. And they've to this day they don't tell anybody about it. So yeah, they handled it very well, and I think that's part of that, having been very honest and open with them in the past about most things. That when I told them this, they trusted me because I told them they know what I do for work, and they know the things that I've seen. And even before I left, I've had moments where I was very harsh in trying to describe those things. I get very mad, and it's hard to even talk about, right? Because I'm ashamed of the things that I've said. But they know the things that I deal with at work and those sort of things. And I told them hey, if I don't know how to take care of myself, I'm not going to be able to keep doing this, So it's been a struggle. It's been an ongoing struggle, since all that stuff. But again, healing takes time, right? My favorite phrase I learned is 10 miles in, 10 miles out, right? If you're going in the forest on a hike, you can't just hike in 10 miles and then expect to get out of the forest in a mile. Mm-hmm. You can't. So if you're going through this stuff for 30 plus years, you're not going to get out of it in 3 months.
Right.
So,
I think one of my favorite things about this journey is that you came home and taught your kids some of the basics,
mm-hmm.
like just even gratitude journal. That's a simple one that your 7 and 9 year old can do, or at the time I guess they were younger, but just simple little, like, start your day showing some gratitude for anything. It could be your breakfast that morning, it could be your home, it could be anything, and then set goals for yourself. Like, just, it was a real positive switch. And then I noticed too, because you understood your general, like, demeanor and mentality when you got home from a shift, you were not snappy with the kids anymore. You didn't just automatically take out anything on the kids. You were never obviously abusive or anything, but you just had a short fuse. And then after that, though, you, like I said, you were just honest, and you're like, okay, guys, you're crowding me. I am gonna go take 20 minutes to myself. And you'd come out, and everything was better. Yeah. And you are more aware of the kids when they're having a tough day now. You can help them through it. Our daughter has gone to him and been like, Daddy, I think I need to meditate right now because I'm feeling stressed out. Like, but she actually does it, and she comes out better. It's not just, I want to do what Daddy's doing. It's a bond they have in that regard. And she trusts you to help her with it.
Right.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's been really good. It's been a really fulfilling journey, right? And now I don't want to say I'm at the end of it, but I feel like I'm on the downhill slide, right? Like I feel better than I've ever felt. Very secure in myself, secure in my belief of who I am, all those things. And I can't describe to you what it's like to not be able to see beauty in life and just be so weary of the world, so worn that nothing can affect you in a good way. Like, it's just kind of one of those things that, it happens. And then to start being able to see that again, like, it's like light breaking through, storm clouds. It's been super, super beneficial to both of us, first of all. And then, even my relationships outside, I'm sure I would think that there'd been a change, like people would notice it, and most people I know have told me as such, but again, these are all things that I think that everybody should be incorporating, some way there's got to be awareness, right, of what you're feeling, and then not minimizing your own feelings. If you're feeling overwhelmed, not telling yourself like, this is normal. Like, if I can handle this because everybody else can handle it, I'm telling you, not everybody else can handle it.
Yeah, they're probably not handling it.
Right. So the awareness for yourself, of yourself and how you're feeling and what's going on, and then acknowledgement, like acknowledgement of those of those feelings and emotions and things like that, and allowing that to happen, and then addressing them correctly in a positive manner, in a way that really lets you focus on that. And it takes time. But after that time, the change that comes it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. You feel
so worth it, right?
Yeah, totally. You just feel like a more well-rounded person, able to handle things, able to, my desire to spend time with people has changed. It's a complete 180 from where I was, and I can go anywhere now and not be worried about offending somebody and walking on eggshells around everybody, because I had to do that for the majority of my life prior to being married. And you're constantly wondering, like, did I, what's that person thinking? Did I do something wrong? And you're trying to read their mind and this and that and and trying to please them all the time. And when you recover from that, like, it just opens up everything. I read a line in a book by Brene Brown, and it always stuck with me. And the line says, you have value. You show people your value when you are yourself, when you're not trying to please them, when you have differences, that is value, whether they like it or not. When you're constantly just there to to please people. You're just there. And I've seen that change, like being myself, I'm a goofy guy. Like anybody who really knows me knows, like I'm a goober. I'll dance to music in front of everybody. I don't, whatever, but I would never let anybody see that before. And now that I have kind of opened up and everything, like some people like me, some people don't,
And that's okay,
yeah,
right?
and that's okay. Like it doesn't.
And that's something else we've taught our children, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't try to people please. You are you, and some people will like it, and some people won't.
That's okay. But I've noticed the majority of people seem to like me. Like it's not it's not a competition. I'm not trying to get the most friends, but
I'm still on the fence. fence.
Well, that hurts. No.
So I have two more questions.
All right.
Okay, so number one, and then we'll let you breathe and not have to rehash all this. But so the first one is, I think a lot of people would hear this and go, okay, so an obvious trigger, an obvious stress is your line of work. Did you ever consider maybe a career change?
Absolutely. Like
yes.
Give us. I know it's a long question. Give me the 1 minute version because.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. Like you would think that it's the job and the politics and these people. Like you'll never see more entitlement in people than when you're working in a public service environment or sort of things. Like you would think. And again, not trying to minimize anything else, but if you work a retail job, people are punks. Like you see that. But when you're going to an emergency and somebody comes out and asks you to shovel their driveway, what are you even talking about right now? Like somebody's dying down the road and you would rather me shovel your car out of the snow? Like, are you serious? Yeah, getting away from all that and going to do something else totally crossed my mind. I had this idea that we were gonna move out of state. We're gonna sell the house. We're gonna move out of state. We're gonna buy a house on a huge lot of land, and we're just gonna grow our own food and do all this stuff. And that's like my ideal life, right?
I think God had other plans.
Yeah. Well, and you really in exploring that with the therapist, like those are all symptoms of escapism. Like that's how I cope with things. I've always, I wouldn't say I run away from them, but if I could just end it and not deal with it, or just call it and not continue, that's it. I'm not there anymore. I actually am back at a point where I enjoy my job again, which is amazing to say. Like I enjoy going to work. I enjoy running calls, which whoever would have thought, but
and God has used you in your mental health journey for other people in your situation.
Yeah. And ever since, I've had multiple people reach out. So, I've just been praying about it, and I've had multiple instances where I've prayed about, like, Lord, just show me, like, and make it abundantly clear, because I'll say it in my prayer, like, I'm a dense man. Like, I cannot see your plan, or I just want to see what I want to see. Help me to be able to know that it's what you want. And the next day, guys are calling me like, hey, man, I just want you to know you are a big asset around here. And I see you as being a true leader and this and that. And like really speaking to the core of my own personal desires. And then I've seen those things come true, right? Like people have asked me for help, and they've asked me for advice and all these different things, different aspects of life. And I've just seen God put me to use. And I don't think that anybody could ever say that that's less valuable. That's the most valuable thing that I can think of, right? Is like to be a part of his plan, to see where he's using you. It's been a real blessing. So the thought to leave has definitely been there, but in being prayerful about it and being mindful, patient, I've been shown that that's just not what he has for me, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
Well,
and that kind of leads me to my second question. So just to close, what was the spiritual component? Like, what did that look like? Did you ever have any times of questioning your faith during this process? Did it rock you? Did it make your faith stronger? What was the spiritual component to it as we close?
So I wouldn't say that it rocked my faith. I'm pretty set on my belief. Like nothing is going to change that. Right? It's kind of like this internal promise that I've made, that I would never let anything come between me and Jesus. And so it didn't rock my faith, but I felt lost. I felt very lost. I remember day one when I got down there and I'm standing on the beach and just looking out at the ocean, and I just didn't know. Like, I didn't know where my life was going. I didn't know where I was bitter, angry, hurt. I was all these different things. So no, I couldn't say that it rocked my faith, but I've definitely felt lost. And through this, through all the growth, and I've learned some things about discipline. That's always been my downfalls. Like, okay, I believe, but do I spend time in the Word? Do I go to church? Do I engage in those conversations? And knowing that it's one of those pillars of overall health, right? That mental health, physical health, and that spiritual health. To take care of my spiritual health has been a journey in and of itself. And so I do read the Bible more often, which I tried. I used to try, and then I wouldn't, and then in and out and flip-flop, whatever. But now it's more of a like, okay, I'm going to do this first thing in the morning. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to engage in these conversations, and I'm going to start reading these books and setting these things up with friends and all that stuff. So my faith has definitely grown stronger through this because I see the healing that has been given to me in this. And again, it's just another sign of God's grace in my life, because, looking back when I was a young man just getting married, I never would have thought that I'd be where we are now,
On that note, real quick, I know that there were things I prayed for years regarding you just as a person or us in our marriage that God answered through this journey. So it took a long time to even get there, and then the process was long, still ongoing, but God answered those prayers. So
you're saying it answered prayer, but not how you expected it.
Not the way I was hoping. You always hope for just a change, snap, but...
Yeah. Man, I heard this, another like motivational thing, right? Is to think of yourself as an arrow, right? Sometimes we have to be pulled backward so that we can be launched forward.
Oh, wow.
And it really kind of struck me like, man, I had to fall down really hard, and put my family through some stuff to be propelled into this new area of life that I never would have.
God provided for us while we were during it all, right?
Exactly.
So.
Exactly.
Yeah. Scripture talks about the refiner's fire. So it's like to purify metal, they have to boil it, and then the impurities come up to the top and they like scrape them off.
Right.
But that boiling process is not comfortable.
It was not fun.
Yeah.
But I'm very grateful now. And it's still ongoing. And I think it forever will be for years to come.
It's just easier now.
But it's given us a foundation to see where we were not given a strong foundation to be mentally healthy people in our childhood. And we know so much more now to try to set our kids up with the proper foundation to be mentally healthy, to be aware. I just hope that they get a little bit better jumpstart than we did in that regard.
I think they've already shown how much healthier. Imagine where you were at their age and then where they are. They're light years ahead of me when I was that age.
That's true.
So just quickly as we close, anybody that's listening, let's say somebody's like they're almost at a breaking point. Let's say their spouse is, let's say their brother is. What would you suggest would be like the first step towards getting help? Should they find a therapist? Should they go see their doctor? Not everybody's a first responder, right? But what would you suggest would be the first?
Yeah, the first.
Just admitting to yourself. What would be step one?
Yeah, the first step is always the hardest, and that one is to ask for help. They call it the 1,000-pound phone because it's the heaviest one to pick up and make that phone call. But you need to reach out to somebody who you trust and who is going to, be able to get you some help. In my case, thankfully, we have that kind of group set up at work. We call it the care team, which I'm now a part of after going through all of this because they helped me and I want to help others who are in the same situation. But they knew exactly what to do, and they helped me out and helped me navigate all those waters. And it's the same thing. Like, you need to be able to make a phone call and say, hey, I need help because I don't know what I'm going to do. And just outside of work, even my own personal life, you and our friend Adam, we're the same way. We went and got coffee, and you guys just listened to me the whole time. And, we prayed together, and it was a very impactful moment in my life. So, yeah, that would be step one, and then make sure that you have somebody who can reach out to somebody, anybody, and then hopefully they can walk through it with you, and you can get the help that you need.
Thank you for listening to the Family Brew Podcast. Where can they find us at?
Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And what should they do when they get there?
Follow us.
What else can they do when they get there, buddy?
They can suggest new coffee flavors and suggest new ideas for episodes and much more.
Sounds good.